It's time for Lefties Losing It, and this is genuinely amusing. Listen here as the worst vice presidential candidate ever, Tampon Tim Walz, you remember him, the man famous for putting tampons in boys' bathrooms across his state. Well, he's revealed that he was selected by Kamala Harris because he could code talk to white dudes. Really, white dudes watching football and fixing their trucks were going to vote for this.
I also was on the ticket, quite honestly, because I could code talk to white guys watching football, fixing their truck, doing that I could put them at ease. I was the permission structure to say, look, you can do this and vote for this.
Yeah, this guy is the Democrats' idea of masculinity. Yes, this dude. Yes, that's a picture of strength and masculinity. Just look at how well he loads a gun.
That's my theory. And it never fits quite right. Never fits quite right. Just not quite right. How do you give it back?
Now, let's check in with the latest thing to be listed as inherently racist. You'll recall that everything from the countryside to working out has been labelled a sign of white supremacy. And now you can add to that list punctuality. Yes, being on time is white supremacy.
Being on time is white supremacy because what are they always on time to do? Oppress. I'm always going to be 10 to 15 minutes late because that's the correct time, according to my people.
Now to the corrupt corporate media. President Donald Trump sat down for an interview with ABC's Terry Moran to discuss the first 100 days of his second term. Now, for the record, Terry Moran, you may never have heard of him, is a classic lefty losing it, and he went about proving that straight away. He seems to think the billions in waste and fraud uncovered by the Department of Government Efficiency will result in no investigations or criminal referrals. Listen to how he frames this question.
We found a lot of fraud. There was a lot of fraud. Fraudulent things were taking place, and we ended that, and those people are going to be suffering because of it.
A legal note, fraud is a crime. There have been no referrals to the Justice Department on any.
Well, you don't know that, do you? How do you know that?
Have there been referrals to the, are there criminal referrals?
How would you know that there were no referrals? I think there were referrals.
They generally, all right, there's been no investigation from the Justice Department.
How do you know that?
I'm asking you, sir.
No, you're not asking me. You made a statement. You're not
now I'm asking you.
That was a statement that you made. There had been.
I'm asking you.
Have there been? Yes, there have.
Donald Trump wasn't putting up with that sort of nonsense. This was his response when asked whether he trusted Vladimir Putin.
Do you trust him? Do you trust him?
I don't trust you. I don't trust a lot of people. I don't trust you. Look at you. You come in all shooting for bear. You're so happy to do the interview.
I am
and
happy.
Then you start hitting me with fake questions. You start telling me that a guy whose hand is covered with a tattoo doesn't have the tattoo. You know.
All right.
I mean, you're being dishonest.
No, I'm not.
No, I am not.
And you might be wondering why President Trump selected this particular ABC clown for an interview. Well, the president addressed that question.
That was Photoshop, Terry. You can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. But I picked you, Terry.
He really is wonderfully droll, and he did not miss the opportunity to remind the ABC and other media that they were complicit in the cover-up about Joe Biden's obvious cognitive decline.
We were laughed at all over the world. We had a president that couldn't walk up a flight of stairs, couldn't walk down a flight of stairs, couldn't walk across the stage without falling. We had a president that was grossly incompetent. You knew it, I knew it, and everybody knew it, but you guys didn't want to write it because you're fake news.
All right. Thank you.
And by the way, ABC is one of the worst, I have to be honest with you.
Thank you.
And let's not forget, it was only a few months ago the ABC gave President Trump an enormous payout to settle a defamation case. They never learn. Joining me now is journalist and author Batia Unga-Sargon. Batia, I have to say I did find that ABC interview enormously entertaining. What was your take, and did we learn anything new?
I think it's really interesting. The president, I think, sees his agenda as a very unifying one, which it is. He was elected with a mandate to bring back the glory of American life, American prosperity, the American working class, the dignity of working class Americans. And I think that he still wants that recognition from a mainstream liberal media that is utterly committed to representing him in the worst possible light. And you can see that he just is so confused because he knows that what he's doing is what he was elected to do. And yet he still experiences this constant contempt from the mainstream media. So it was very interesting to see them playing off each other in those designated roles, despite the fact that the country itself is so different.
It is, but when he selects these leftists to conduct the interview, he knows their form, they're not newcomers. Does he really expect anything different, or does he actually want to have that fight? Does he want to take them on?
It's very interesting because he recently met with a number of different journalists. There were 3 that he met with from The Atlantic, and then he sat down with the comedian and sort of political commentator Bill Maher. And in both of those cases, Bill Maher, of course, has criticized him very vociferously, but also the journalist from The Atlantic, everybody who he met with in those contexts talked about how charming he is and how when they met with him one-on-one, they were able to have really interesting conversations, and that he does come off in this very charming way, even when he is speaking to people who have criticized him. I do think that he has this feeling of things are so different now. He won the popular vote. He won every swing state. Every state in America moved to the right, in appreciation for what he's promising. So I think he is very sort of confused and stymied by the idea that they're still running that 2016 playbook again, still calling him Hitler, still calling him a threat to democracy, when it's clear that the country is behind him.
Well, you're not imagining it. Just about every news report on Donald Trump and his administration is negative. It is 2016 all over again. Analysis by the Media Research Centre found that so far this year, Trump's administration has faced 92% negative coverage from ABC, CBS and NBC. That's 3 networks, but the leftist media is pretty much in unison in being anti-Trump fairly consistently, Batia. Is it having an impact with the public? Because, of course, Trump voters have a great distrust of the media. They're probably ignoring this coverage. But those swinging voters, surely it has an impact with them.
We just stop for a minute and talk about how utterly absurd it is that a man who won the popular vote is covered negatively 92% of the time. And Rita, it just points out the truth here, which is that it is not just the president that the elites and the media hate. It is the American people, and the American people who want what he is offering. That contempt is not just for him, but for all of the millions of Americans who he represents. It's totally, totally absurd. I do think it is impacting independents. His polls are not great right now. And of course, he started out very unpopular. He's a polarizing figure. We have an enormous class divide. So, the election really was decided based on whether you have a college degree or not. A lot of Americans with a college degree have this very unhealthy obsession with him and hatred of him. So that could be up to 25% of Americans right there. And then you have independents who I think are very upset about the volatility in the market. But of course, we have to go through this period. We have to decouple from China. It is absurd how China has been eating our lunch, buying up our debt. We've basically, mortgaged our children's future out to China in exchange for cheap crap. It was always going to be a period of adjustment when you had somebody who had the courage to actually make that happen. And of course, President Trump is the only person who was willing to do that.
But Tia, just on the tariffs, do you think Donald Trump can withstand the pressure? Can he hold the line against China? Because he's facing enormous criticism. What he's looking to do is going to be a medium long-term plan, and in the short term there's going to be a great deal of pain.
Absolutely. You know, Trump was almost killed twice last year. He's a man who feels that he faced his maker and he's on a mission, and he doesn't care what Wall Street has to say. I mean, he's so clear that he doesn't work for them and he's not answerable to them. He works for the American people and he's answerable to the American people. They have a few trade deals that are on the table that are being finalized that they keep saying are going to come out very soon, and I believe them. India, South Korea, Vietnam have been floated. We've already seen India and Vietnam impose tariffs on Chinese steel, which is an enormous, enormous win. But of course, the elites don't want to admit any of this because tariffs are class warfare on them, on behalf of the working class. So, if Wall Street was not livid, I would be worried that we were not doing the right thing here.
We've been talking about media lies, and who can forget the media's complicity in painting the violent BLM protests as mostly peaceful. Remember that image from CNN? People think it's AI these days. Mostly peaceful protests as towns burn down. Well, the activists of the FBI who took a knee in solidarity with BLM and neo-Marxist, anti-American, anti-police movement, they've been reassigned. CNN reports these reassignments are viewed as demotions by many inside the FBI and come nearly 5 years after the episode that ignited a great deal of controversy inside the Bureau. But Tia, I've got to say, I would have preferred sackings, but I think this is a good start. These actions by activists within the FBI, within the Justice Department, they have caused enormous damage. They've really undermined the public's trust in these institutions.
I think that's a really good point. I remember at the time, actions like that were seen as unifying because you had all these protesters out there burning down these cities, and then you would have, members of law enforcement basically trying to signal, look, we're all, one country. We're all on the same side of this. We all want better policing. We all want fair policing. But I think you're totally right that what we know now about Black Lives Matter, which we didn't at the time, that it is such a, decrepit, amoral institution, does not represent Black people or a unification of this country around, the values that Dr. King espoused, but rather a real radical nature that does cast many Americans, including many police officers, as racist in a very damaging way. So it's really nice to see institutions taking stock of where we're at, and a place like the FBI saying, look, we're going to stand for a very different kind of relationship between us and the public, and we're not going to give them any excuses to see us as on one side or the other.
Look, I challenge the notion that we didn't know what BLM was back then. I think we knew that they were open about what they stood for. They were open about their Marxist ideals, the fact that the three founders identified as Marxists, that they were anti the nuclear family. This was all on their official website. They scrubbed some of that in later years. And yet we had, I think to me, it's as a grosser betrayal of the American people as the media's complicity in covering up Joe Biden's cognitive decline. The fact that the media went along with this group, with these protests, with this mass destruction and mayhem across America as if it was some progressive movement, rather than a really quite a destructive anti-American movement that wasn't really interested in Black lives, Fatia.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. I was one of the people who was calling it a racial moral panic at the time and was, quite nearly canceled for it, almost, lost my job. And it was a very intense time because there was that feeling that the media was completely on the side of the activists. And I actually wrote a whole book about this called Bad News, How Woke Media is Undermining Democracy, about how basically the racial moral panic, all of this kind of far left woke ideology was a smokescreen for the ways in which the elites in the media and in politics and in tech and everything had become very wealthy at the expense of the working class. And so that wokeness and what Trump is doing with the tariffs and with immigration, it's all one and the same. He's fighting for the dignity of working class Americans, which was sold out by the Democrats, who pretended that they were still representing the working class while actually themselves getting rich off of the backs of working class Americans. And then, of course, instituting these very, unsafe ideology around defund the police and so forth, which poor and working class people and people of color were the most negatively impacted by.
Well, one of the biggest stories in the US for the last week or two has been this so-called Maryland man, Maryland dad. And the way the Democrats have gone into bat for this illegal immigrant who was deported to El Salvador and is a gangbanger. 2 courts have found him to be a member of MS-13. Well, Fox News has obtained a second protective order that was filed against this man, Garcia, by his wife back in 2020, which she accuses him of not just physical abuse and threatening her, but she also said that she has a recording there where he says he can kill her and nobody can do anything to him. I am in shock, Batia, that the Democrats are going to war for this man. I mean, what a stupid hill to die on.
It's really amazing that they're out here with their whole, je suis Kilmar, if they can come for the wife-beating gangbanger human trafficker, surely you are next in line. I mean, it's totally amazing. They just love to white knight for criminals. And, I think some of it they didn't know when they started white knighting for him. But, the idea that this is a person who's worth, doing anything for, that there was a U.S. senator who flew there to shook his hand, the hand that hit his wife while she was holding her child. It's so amazing. And all of the immigration hysteria right now of the babies that were deported, or, the people who only criticized Israel who are having their green cards revoked, it's all just hoaxes all the way down. And the reason for that is because the Democrats have nothing. Trump has outflanked them to the left on the economy, and he has outflanked them to the left on being anti-war. And he's not even a social conservative, he's a moderate. So he basically stole the Democrats' pro-working class agenda out from under them, and they have nothing left to fight him with. All they have is what they're doing, which is, let's go rescue the gangbangers. Let's stand for China and oppose tariffs, right? And let's try to get that border open again. It's so appalling.
Batia Ungar Sargon, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.